What is up, fantasy people? You are back with the True North Fantasy Pod. I am Trav, coming from the cozy confines of Dirty Laundry Studios 2.0, and thank you for joining for this episode. You can find all of our work at truenorthfb.com, so please visit the site and hit us up on the socials, which are at truenorthffb on both Twitter and Instagram. Please go subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/TNFF network, where you can find the whole gamut of True North content. My shows are on there. The Gold Jacket podcast is on there with Connor and Jimmy on Tuesdays. And of course, the Full Tilt Dynasty crew has shows like 8 days a week. So the network has got you covered from start to finish. Appreciate all those boys for putting in the work on the content to build up the channel. So go check out the Full Tilt Dynasty crew and the Gold Jacket podcast. We love the boys over there. On this episode, I will be talking about a few of my takeaways from week 3. It was an exciting week 3. We had some interesting games, some interesting finishes. And so I'm going to tell you about some of those takeaways and what they mean for the rest of the 2022 season. So I'm just going to dive right in. Lamar Jackson is the first topic of the day. And is he ever? He is hunting another quarterback one overall season. And don't call it a comeback, guys, because he has been here for years, rocking his peers, putting suckers in fear, making the tears rain down like a monsoon. And we as fantasy players just get to listen to the bass go boom explosion. Shout out to LL Cool J for that track, because it is ever so fitting for what Lamar Jackson is doing right now. And it's just been a treat to watch. This passing game in Baltimore is clicking right now, kind of harkening back to that 2019 efficiency that made Lamar Jackson the league MVP. And he subsequently also broke fantasy football as we know it. And he's on track to do just that this year. And it's all on efficiency. We saw that in 2019. He had, I think, over a 9% touchdown rate, which is, I believe, the best like ever. And this year he's pacing higher than that with over an 11% touchdown rate. So he's throwing touchdowns on a little bit less volume. If you look at it, he's currently 25th in completions in the league and 17th in passing yards. But he leads the league with 10 passing touchdowns. So he is crushing right now. And you look at how he's doing it and some of these weapons that he's got. You see his average depth of target over 10 yards, which is second best in the league. And you would think he's throwing a bunch of big, deep touchdowns. But he's actually only got 2 big touchdowns with like a 55 and a 75 yarder, both to Bateman, I believe they were. But you look at it a little bit further, and the damage that he's doing is actually in the red zone for Lamar Jackson. As a passer, 7 out of his 10 touchdowns this season have come in the red zone. He's on pace to smash last season's 19 red zone touchdown passes, which was in 12 games. But for some context, this season, he's thrown 14 pass attempts in the red zone through 3 games. And he's had touchdowns on 7 of them. So that's a 50% clip. Obviously not going to maintain that throughout the season, but very encouraging signs for him to get back to where we thought he was as a passer before that offseason that he had last year in 2021. And when I say offseason, he had an off year, not during the offseason. But getting into the Ravens offense, they're throwing the ball a lot more. There's some stats out there about pass rate over expectation, and the Baltimore Ravens are right around the top in that category. As a team, they throw the ball over 50% of the time in the red zone specifically. And looking back to 2020, they only threw the ball 38% of the time in the red zone, as well as the same percentage in 2019. So they're passing the ball more when they're near pay dirt. And I'm not sure they really maintain that clip all season, but I'm still really buying into it, because the fact of the matter is that this run game is not getting better just yet. J.K. Dobbins just got back from that injury, and they are clearly going to limit his workload. We saw last season when the run game was ineffective that they put it up in the air. And this year it's going to be a lot more effective than it was last year. It was kind of a mishmash, and it's interesting to look at it too, because You see that Marquise Hollywood Brown is now out the door, so that offense has become a lot more condensed between Rashad Bateman mainly and Mark Andrews, with some Devin Duvernay sprinkled in there, which is kind of exciting to see as well. Love me some Dev Duv. But yeah, we're seeing like now that he's got a bit more condensed offense without having Hollywood Brown, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, all as guys who kind of command targets, he's been able to really dial in who's going to get these targets and who's going to get the kind of efficient work that comes from this Baltimore passing offense. Yeah, definitely not going to see the run game that we saw in 2019 from the team overall. We're probably going to see it from Lamar Jackson, but in 2019, they put over 3,200 yards on the ground for the season, which is the most team rushing yards since 1948. And even in 2020, they put up over 3,000 yards, which is the fifth most in that span. And they were actually the only team to be in the top five twice. So 2020 and 2019 Baltimore Ravens are top five team rushing yards since 1948. We're not going to see that this year out of the Baltimore Ravens. This rushing offense is not what it was back then. Mark Ingram was clicking. Gus Edwards was clicking. They don't have those guys right now. J.K. Dobbins can provide all of what those guys provided, but he has to be back at full health and he has to be getting a full workload. I do think he has major upside as a guy who can break off big plays as a runner, but I don't think he's going to make as much of an effect for them to skew way back to the running game. I think this passing offense is going to continue to be motoring, and we just need to capitalize on that for fantasy football. Lamar Jackson is a quarterback that I might try and buy high on in those one quarterback leagues because he provides such a huge advantage right now. So in those one quarterback leagues, a lot of teams, maybe they drafted a second quarterback who's replacement level and they need a running back. Go and try and put a feeler out to get Lamar Jackson on your team, because not only is he a quarterback one, basically he's a running back one attached to a quarterback one. And I think he's going to wreck shop this year. He's my quarterback one for the rest of the season without a doubt. And yeah, Lamar said, knock you out, folks. You gotta dive in on that Baltimore Ravens offense when we see it. Mark Andrews is an absolute stud. Yeah, these passing weapons are clicking. So nevermore for the Ravens. Next game I'm going to talk about is kind of in a similar situation, and that's my guy Jalen Hurts for them Birds. And how about them Birds? The Eagles are dialed in right now, and Jalen Hurts has taken them to a whole nother level. He's all of a sudden one of the most efficient passers in the entire game. Much like Lamar Jackson, the passing volume is not stellar. The Eagles are the 22nd team in the league in pass plays per game with 33, and they run the ball over half of the time overall. And then if you look in the red zone where those scoring opportunities are, they run the ball almost 60% of the time. So it's not like he's getting by on volume. He's getting by on efficiency. You look at all of that, and he's chilling with the third most passing yards, the most yards per attempt, and he has the second most fantasy points per dropback of any quarterback in the league through 3 weeks. So I think it's looking really good for the Eagles offense, and Jalen Hurts is like changing that huge narrative that he could not be a good passer. He has been a great passer so far in 2022. The boost, I think, is that he's throwing the ball deep a little bit more. Obviously, he has those great weapons with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith looking like a killer after that fat week 3, finishing as the wide receiver 1 in half-point PPR. Like last year, we didn't really think an Eagles receiver could finish any week as the wide receiver 1. Devontae Smith has done that, and A.J. Brown has been damn close. Yeah, I just think it's looking really good for Hurts with those weapons. He has the 4th highest deep completion percentage through 3 weeks, and he's top 12 in deep attempts overall. So that is a very refreshing change for this Eagles offense that was almost scared to go down the field in 2021. So things have shit done changed, and you got to check the Vizib. We know with Jalen Hurts, he's a great runner. He was top 3 in most quarterback rushing categories last year, and we're seeing an encore of that this season. He's got the most carries, the most red zone carries, most rushing touchdowns, and the second most rushing yards behind Lamar Jackson. Look at our friends over at Fantasy Points. Jake Tribby from fantasypoints.com, one of their up-and-coming writers. Love me some Jake Tribby. Put out a tweet today, which is Tuesday, that has Jalen Hurts with the second most missed tackles forced per attempt of all players running the ball, more than Nick Chubb, more than Javonte Williams, and more than David Montgomery, who have all been elite in that missed tackles forced department in the past. And Jalen Hurts is that as a runner at quarterback. So similar to Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts is adding an element of rushing that you don't see in very many quarterbacks at all in the NFL. Even in this age of running quarterbacks kind of sweeping the nation, Jalen Hurts is like superseding any of those expectations, besides what Lamar Jackson does. But we know Lamar Jackson's just a unicorn. So talking about those elite missed tackles forced guys, Jalen Hurts is elite in 2022. Pour one out for my buddy Mike Bauer from the Dynasty Rewind crew and his previous disdain for everything to do with Jalen Hurts in the past. The birds, they are soaring right now, and it's because of Jalen Hurts, not despite Jalen Hurts. And to be honest, you just love to fucking see it, boys. Go Birds. So I was talking about my friends over at fantasypoints.com there, and Jake Tribby with his awesome tweet. Jake puts out tons of really good data. And of course, bringing the hits as always, Scott Barrett, Graham Barfield, John Hansen, Joe Dolan, the whole crew over there. Wes Huber is doing amazing work as well. Go check out fantasypoints.com. This podcast, the True North Fantasy Pod, is a part of the Fantasy Points Media Group, and at fantasypoints.com, by using our promo code TrueNorth22, all capitals TrueNorth22, you can get 10% off your 2022 subscription with fantasypoints.com, and the hits just keep coming over there. I've talked about it almost every week. Wes Huber's Advanced Matchups article is almost everything you will need to prepare for any week of the season. Scott Barrett is obviously bringing that week one, or that weekly recap that he brings every week, which he has coined as his most valuable piece of content in season. So make sure you go check that stuff out. Subscribe at fantasypoints.com. Their data package, if you look at all the boys' Twitter accounts, they're tweeting out a bunch of really good data that is going to be included in the Fantasy Points data package, and I can't wait to get my hands on that. So you should too. TrueNorth22 at fantasypoints.com will get you 10% off of that subscription. And yeah, please go check it out, because if you want to kind of dig into some of the best content in the market, that is it. And doing so with our promo code is the best way to support this show. So really appreciate anyone who's done that. If you go in there, you find some of your favorite nuggets on the Fantasy Points website, shoot us a tweet on Twitter and let us know what it is, and we'll dive in together. We really, really like doing that. And I know that the team over at Fantasy Points loves hearing about the different bits and pieces of their content that the people really go to and are attracted to. So please let us know. We love hearing about it, and just enjoy all of the benefits of the fantasypoints.com subscription. Couple more observations from week 3. The next one here we're going to talk about is Jamal Williams. And I know this seems kind of like a silver platter one, because DeAndre Swift has a shoulder injury going on and he could miss a couple of weeks. But Jamal Williams is in weekly flex consideration, even with DeAndre Swift active. Currently, Jamal Williams is the running back 8 on the season through 3 weeks. And obviously, DeAndre Swift, I believe, is the running back 5. So this backfield is producing mad fantasy points. But if you look at last year and kind of how it shook out for these two running backs and sharing some of that load, Jamal Williams was super involved. He had virtually the same amount of rushing yards and rush attempts as did DeAndre Swift in 2021. DeAndre Swift just had 2 more touchdowns on the ground, so not very many more points as far as a fantasy points perspective as a runner. But the gap between the two was obviously in the passing game. DeAndre Swift had 62 receptions to Jamal Williams 25, and then Swift had like 300 more receiving yards and 2 touchdowns to Williams 0. So obviously there is a big gap there, and I'm not saying that's going to change whatsoever, because when DeAndre Swift is healthy, he is one of, if not the best receiving running back in the entire NFL. He's basically second on this team's target totem pole behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he's going to lock that down when he's healthy. So don't hold out hope that Jamal Williams is going to start eating into that kind of target pie that DeAndre Swift is just gobbling up, because Jamal Williams is not going to do that. But the thing we're seeing this season is that Jamal Williams is commanding that rushing volume. Currently, he's leading the league with 4 touchdowns through 3 weeks, whereas DeAndre Swift only has 1, and Jamal Williams has 43 carries to DeAndre Swift's 27. So I think the bigger piece of the rushing pie is going to continue to go to Jamal Williams. He's seen a sizable increase in that compared to last year, and to me, that closes a bit of that gap that we're seeing between him and DeAndre Swift's receiving work. I think the ultimate upside in this backfield remains with DeAndre Swift and that pass catching work. I think the other 2 weeks ago, he had like 7 carries, but he ripped off like 90 rushing yards or something. So even on that limited rushing work, DeAndre Swift does present more upside than Jamaal Williams, but I think the key for me in Jamaal Williams being much more viable this season is the offense's improvement as a whole and his usage when they get into the red zone. I've talked a lot about red zone work. That's a big thing that I like to key on if we're looking at trying to maybe chase some fantasy points from these guys who have some uncertainty. If you can dive into those lucrative touches, as I like to call them, lucrative touches being red zone work, which can get you more touchdown opportunities, obviously. That's something that I like to look into. And this Detroit offense can move the ball, and this is going to result in more red zone trips. The Lions currently have been in the red zone 13 times so far in 2022, tied for the league lead with some other elite offenses like the Kansas City Chiefs. And in those 13 trips, the Lions have scored 11 touchdowns, which is leading the league. That's good for just under 85% of the red zone trips going for 6 points, and no other team in the league right now is over 70% in that category. So the red zone conversions for Detroit have been really high, and I think 85% is pretty fucking high for them to keep doing that all season. But I think they could maintain some of that efficiency in the red zone with Jamaal Williams being the main beneficiary of that. He has that rushing work on lock already this season, guys. So if you don't know, then you know. Looking at what he's done with that red zone work, he has the most red zone fantasy points scored in the league among running backs, the most carries, the most touchdowns, all 4 of his touchdowns coming inside the 20. So he's getting work and he's doing something with it, which we really like to see. And I think as we look at the rest of the season and what we do with Jamaal Williams being a guy who is a clear backup, coming into a little bit of work with DeAndre Swift's injury, and some of those guys are guys that you'd like to sell off of big games, but I don't know if I would be doing that with Jamaal Williams. He's going to remain a huge part of this offense, whether DeAndre Swift is healthy or not. I think DeAndre Swift's health is probably a driving force behind all of the work that Jamaal Williams is getting, but he's getting that work nonetheless, and he's putting up flex-worthy fantasy games. So he's a guy for me who could be slotted into your flex most weeks going forward, regardless of DeAndre Swift's health. I think if DeAndre Swift is hurt in the next couple of games, I think you've got a running back 1 in Jamaal Williams with the way this offense is going in Detroit. And I think he's just a great player to try and add in a trade. Like if you're looking to do a bit of an upgrade at another position, but maybe you're giving up a little bit more value, see if you can get a Jamaal Williams type guy back, and he can kind of lock down that flex with you maybe giving up that kind of elite asset to fill out your bench or something like that. So Jamaal Williams is a guy that I would be attacking, not a guy that I would be selling. And that's interesting because he is the clear backup there. So go get you some J-dubs, and I think you're going to be pretty happy for it because that touchdown total looks like it could be fat this year if he keeps that red zone work up. The last one is another running back, and this guy is a bad man, and that would be Nick Chubb. And I think he's just getting started for this season. And I mean, if you've been a loyal listener or follower of the True North Fantasy Pod, you already knew this. We are True North Chubb truthers up here. We like to keep our sticks on the ice, and we always give her 110. And let's be honest, Nick Chubb definitely keeps his stick on the ice, and he definitely gives her 110. I don't think that guy can go any less than 110% if you watch him play. I think he's the best pure running back in the league. And for me, moving forward this season, he is a top 12 running back. Now, that's probably a little bit more towards the back half of the top 12 just because he doesn't catch a lot of passes. But I think he's kind of taken Derrick Henry's crown as the best of those non-pass catching running backs. Look at what Henry did in week 3, and he's basically a pass catching scat back now. He got 6 targets in week 3. So we need to change our opinion on Derrick Henry because he's basically just a satellite back at this point if he's getting that kind of targets, right? But for Chubb, we know that this Browns team under Kevin Stefanski is going to lean heavily on the running game. They've done that in the past, even back to his days as the offensive coordinator for Minnesota. And look at the guys they got there. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, dynamic little duo. And I think the biggest worry about Nick Chubb wasn't necessarily his lack of pass catching, because we kind of know that this offense doesn't target the running backs a whole lot. Like Kareem Hunt right now has 10 targets through 3 weeks, and Nick Chubb has 4. So I don't think this offense doesn't throw the ball to running backs enough where you're really going to be too worried about the gap that Kareem Hunt has over Nick Chubb in that facet. I think Nick Chubb is still the engine through which this offense runs. And on the ground, which is what we care about for Nick Chubb, he outcarries Kareem Hunt almost 2-1. And like I said, they just don't throw to running backs a ton for me to necessarily care about that, 10-12% target share that Kareem Hunt might have. I just don't think that is going to be fruitful or enough for me to worry about Nick Chubb, because that rushing work is still going to be on lock. I think I said a couple weeks ago on a segment of I Got 5 on it, where I was going in on the Nick Chubb over with Underdog Fantasy. Shout out to them. Promo code TNFF at your first deposit for an instant match. But one of the things that I said there is that basically every game that Nick Chubb gets 20 plus carries, he's getting close to 100 yards or he's getting a touchdown. So with this team showing that they're going to continue to give him 20 plus carries, I'm riding the lightning on that in a big way. Talk a little bit about that red zone work that I was talking about earlier. He is neck and neck with Jamaal Williams. I think he's less than a point under him as far as fantasy points scored in the red zone. And looking at the Kareem Hunt effect, Kareem Hunt has the same amount of red zone rushing attempts with 11, and that actually leads the league. Like, these guys are in the same backfield and they're both tied for the league lead in red zone rushing attempts. But Nick Chubb has all 4 of his touchdowns on that rushing work. Kareem Hunt has 1, I believe. So yeah, Nick Chubb is an elite red zone running back, and he's going to continue to do so. And I think, like, if you look at him and Jamal Williams, obviously it's apples to oranges, but I think Nick Chubb 100% will continue this, and that's just kind of a part of who he is. Where I think Jamal Williams, like I said, a little bit of that work that he's getting could be due to the Lions trying to keep DeAndre Swift healthy. So Nick Chubb is just that dude in the red zone. And I think if anyone in your league is worried about Chubb's season-long outlook with Kareem Hunt in the fold, you should capitalize on that, and you should buy the shit out of Nick Chubb. He's going to solidify your running back 1 spot. Maybe you didn't go heavy on the position and you got a buttload of wide receivers. You got a wide receiver needy team that has Nick Chubb maybe as their running back 2. Capitalize on that for sure, and you will have yourself a baller in the running back 1 slot on your team. And looking at that rest of the season outlook, like, Jacoby Brissett's not going to be in there forever, right? So we have to take a peek at what it's going to look like with Deshaun Watson coming into the fold. I think while Jacoby Brissett is the starter, totally good. They're definitely going to rely on that run game. I think when Deshaun Watson comes back, maybe they skew a little bit more towards the pass, but I think we could see an uptick in, like, a per carry efficiency for Nick Chubb, because Deshaun Watson entering as that super mobile quarterback will have to have defenses on high alert for him to run the ball. And I think that could just open up more lanes for Nick Chubb. And we know that he is an absolute big play machine. He's been one of the leaders in explosive run percentage over the past few seasons. And that's just a part of who he is as well. He will break off big runs, and he will leave defenders in the dust with those stiff arms and just running dudes over with his shoulders. So I'm not worried about Nick Chubb when Deshaun Watson comes into the fold. I do think they could pass the ball a little bit more, and that could benefit Kareem Hunt a little bit more down the stretch. But I think Nick Chubb is still going to have lanes open, and he's still going to break off a bunch of chunk plays, score a bunch of touchdowns to be that back end running back 1 for your team. So I guess all that is to say that I would be going after both of these running backs, right? Like, Kareem Hunt might look like he's lost a little bit of luster to some fantasy gamers as well. So you can definitely get him for maybe that stretch run where he gets more passes caught from Deshaun Watson. But the Browns backfield is just one you want to attack, and Nick Chubb is one of my favorite running backs. So he's definitely somebody I'd be going out and getting if I'm in a position to do so, and if I need that running back on my roster. Absolutely. And that's it. That's all I've got, folks. This is kind of a quick little epi I wanted to get out there. Really appreciate everybody for coming and checking out the content. Like I said, this is the True North Dirty Laundry Studios 2.0, where I will be coming from. If you like the content, please leave a comment on that YouTube video. Check it out at youtube.com/TNFF network. And yeah, comments, likes, we like to hear what you think about it so we can improve the content for the people. That is the goal, is to help you become a better fantasy player. And if you think there's anything that I could be doing differently to help you towards that, please let me know, and we will absolutely get there. fantasypoints.com. Shout out to them, of course. True North 22 is the promo code. Check out the description of the video and you'll find that promo code. Also, show some love to our friends at Underdog and at Trophy Smack. The promo code is TNFF there as well, and you can see those offers in the episode description, whether it's audio or video as well. So make sure you check that out. And yeah, just the site, truenorthffb.com. I did a little bit of a revamp this off season just to pare it down a little bit. Our content is solely on the YouTube channel now and a little bit of stuff on the website, but we don't do written work at truenorthffb.com no more. So a little bit less workload on us, a little easier to manage. And yeah, so go check out the site at truenorthffb.com because we put in a little bit of work there and we really wanted to highlight the video work that everyone's doing. So shout out to the crew. We love you all. And the merch is on there too. You can check out some of that True North swag, powered by Viridian Global. So please go check that out. And if you're rocking any of that Viridian Global gear, please make sure you post a picture on the socials. We love seeing people rocking our gear. We got a buddy down in Australia that did it a couple months back, and it's really cool to see that we have a little bit of that reach. We really like to see that and see kind of the brand growing. So thanks to everybody for doing that. Really appreciate it. Hoping to be back actually later this week with another episode. I know my schedule is a little bit fucked right now for anybody who is a loyal listener, so I appreciate you sticking around. It's just the way life's going right now. I've been trying to do a Tuesday episode, but that didn't work out this week, so this one's going to drop on Wednesday, and then I'm hoping to get at least a Friday video out consistently every week. So the earlier in the week video, a little bit spotty back and forth on the day, but that Friday video should be coming weekly. So thanks a lot for everyone to stick around. And yeah, check us out, interact with us. Let us know what conundrums you have going into the week every week. We would love to help you with that. So until next time, peace.